Hello and welcome to our recording of Learning Target 1.3 for Biology at Southeastern. This is the flow of energy and matter. So our goal for today is to be able to explain how organisms sustain life by obtaining, transporting, transforming, releasing, and eliminating matter and energy. So that's a lot of words to say that we're trying to figure out how matter and energy flow through the environment. So let's start with just a couple of rules about how we're going to do our note taking on this. There's a lot of information in here. We want you to focus on things that are underlined in red and written in red. So that stuff will be what needs to go in your notes. However, anything else, please pay attention, follow along, and add in the margins if you need to. So before we get going too far, here's some key vocabulary words we'll be using to describe how energy moves through the environment. You need to write these in the boxes. They're actually at the bottom of your notes. So there's 4 boxes at the bottom of your notes. The first one is obtain. So obtain means to acquire or get something. So in this case, we're talking about acquiring energy. So or matter, when we say obtain energy or matter, we mean that you're getting it. So the plants or humans or animals, they're getting that energy by obtaining it. The next word is transport. So when we say that animals or plants or organisms are transporting, it means to take or to move from one place to another. So we transport matter and energy by moving it. Transforming. So transform, just like the Transformers, means to make a change in form or appearance. So just like the Megatron transforms into something else, transform means to change the actual appearance, the way it looks. Okay, so we're talking about transforming energy. We're changing what that energy looks and feels like. Lastly, we have release. So release simply means to set free or to let go. So when we release energy, we're releasing it into the environment. It's not disappearing, we're just letting it go somewhere else. When we release carbon dioxide from our mouths, we're not making it disappear, we're just letting it go. Okay, so that's our vocab for this learning target. Make sure that's in the bottom of the page. Pause this if you need to. Alright, so talking about the movement of matter and energy on Earth. First, we want you to think about this. You run out the door, you're down the street, and you just make it to the bus. You're winded, you're tired after your sprint. So the question is, have you lost energy? Has your energy been lost? So think about that for a second. The answer is actually no. Your energy has not been lost. It just changed forms. In this case, you can feel it as heat as your body temperature rises. But in our world, energy and matter can never be lost. It's only transformed from one type to another. So you transformed the energy in your body into heat and movement because you had to run to catch the bus. But the energy did not just disappear. Okay? When we talk about the law of conservation of energy, some of you might remember this from your physics classes. It states that energy can be transformed from one form of energy to another, but no new energy can be created and no energy can be destroyed. It just changes from one type to another over and over again. So if we look at this picture here, we're talking about a cannon, which is chemical energy, turning in this cannonball into kinetic energy. It flies and then eventually crashes into the ground and releases as heat. So these are all different types of energy, but the energy is not created or destroyed. We're just transforming it from one type of energy to another. Alright, so let's talk a minute quickly about different forms of energy. So as our little light bulb says here, energy is the ability to do work. Again, you might remember that from your physics class if you had physics. So all these different types of energy, you can look at them on your own. We have light, we have radio waves, lightning, power lines, moving, heating things up, okay, the sun. These are all different types of energy, just to review. Okay, so this needs to go in your notes. We're defining what we call the energy cycle. The cycle of energy is the process in which electromagnetic energy from the sun is absorbed by plants on Earth, then transformed into different forms of energy in a continuous cycle. So what's that saying? It's saying that the sun releases energy and it's absorbed by the earth, and the earth transforms it into different forms of energy. So all of that energy therefore must come from the sun, and then it is cycled and released in the earth. Okay, here are some examples below. We'll get to some more examples in a minute, but we have light transforming into chemical energy. This electrical energy we plug into the wall turns into thermal energy in a heater or a hot plate. Chemical energy is eating food, getting energy from that and turning it into mechanical energy, or turning our gasoline into mechanical energy in the car. So if you follow this example, we go from light to chemical, chemical to mechanical. So we turn energy from the sun into energy that eventually makes us move. Okay, so that's the biggest idea we need to know from this. All right, it's not in your notes, but you need to know that energy originates from the sun. So when you're thinking about things that you need to survive, you need the planet, we need sun. If we don't have sunlight, everything dies. So energy changes from one form to another, but it starts on Earth as what we're calling electromagnetic energy from the sun. That energy is used to power photosynthesis, which we convert into chemical energy. All right, so this flow of energy, let's talk about a few more examples here. So again, solar energy from the sun or electromagnetic energy from the sun turns into chemical energy when the plants produce. Animals eat the plants. Some of that energy is lost as heat. Eventually the animals die. They decompose. That energy is lost as heat. There are bacteria and things that decompose what's left of the animals and release the chemicals into the atmosphere. But as they do that, they produce heat, and eventually that all goes back into our plants. And as the plants absorb the chemicals and nutrients, they release heat. So you can see a common theme here. All the energy comes from the sun. All the energy eventually is lost as heat. If you think about yourself, you consume energy, but you are warm all the time. That's because your body is doing things that make it release heat. All right, let's move on to the conservation of matter. Conservation of matter, just like energy, matter cannot be created or destroyed. Matter changes from one form to another. So if you can read our little caption here, Mufasa is talking to Simba. Mufasa says, when we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass. And so we are all connected in the great circle of life. So that's not a very good Mufasa voice, but it does tell you that Simba is learning about the circle of life and is actually learning about the circle of matter. So matter is being recycled in the universe because we eat the grass, we die, we become the grass. The grass grows and then another animal eats that, and that matter is being continuously cycled through the earth. Okay, so the matter cycle, if we put a definition to it, again, this goes in your notes. It's the cycle of matter, the cycle of matter is the process in which nutrients are transformed and recycled into different forms in a continuous cycle. So there's a lot of cycle in that. But the idea here is that the matter is transformed and recycled into different forms, just like Mufasa was teaching Simba. So for some examples, let's look at the next few slides. All right, so there's three big cycles of matter we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and the water cycle. Okay, this is in your notes right here. You want to put in the different pieces that go in your notes. But when we talk about matter, we're talking about any types of atoms, right? So carbon dioxide, oxygen, those are molecules made of atoms. Those things are being transferred through producers, consumers, and decomposers. All right, so this is a really complicated version of the carbon cycle. The basic idea here is that carbon is present in all living organisms. We learned about that in 1.2. That's because they're organic molecules, right? So carbon is present in everything. Everything that's alive has carbon in it. So carbon goes into the atmosphere. Plants absorb the carbon. The plants eventually die and decay. Animals eat the plants. That goes into our ground. That's absorbed by decomposers. decomposers transform that energy. When we burn, we release carbon dioxide. When we're decomposing and turn into coal, that's releasing carbon dioxide. So very complicated process. I'm not expecting you to know all of this. I just want you to know that it exists and that this is one example of how matter is cycled through the ecosystem. Another example is the nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen's key for formation of proteins in our bodies. We need to eat plants and different meats which contain these nitrogen proteins so that we can make our own proteins. So this cycle just describes how plants fix the nitrogen for us. We release it into the atmosphere, fix it, we eat it, it goes into the ground. So it all cycles around and again. Water cycle we're all pretty familiar with. Probably have been talking about this since elementary school, but really quickly. Water evaporates, it condensates in clouds, it precipitates, it runs off the surface, and it goes back into the streams and the lakes, evaporates, and we go start our cycle all over again. Okay, so the next few slides, if you do download or open up this PowerPoint, you can see some different versions of the carbon cycle, a little simpler version of the carbon cycle here. Here's the nitrogen cycle. And lastly, we have the water cycle. So, quite a bit of information in that. Make sure as you're going through all those slides, you're highlighting everything in red. You have the key vocabulary. You're going to need all of this as you work on your practices and you prepare for your quizzes. Hope that helps. If you need help in PACE, sign up on the conference board or see your teachers in your other classes. Good luck.